I got a shuttle to the trailhead, and we rumble along this Forest Service road, and then we get to this trailhead. And I get out, and I thank him, I pay him for the shuttle, and he gets in the truck and just drives off and leaves me there. And I'm like, oh, I guess it's time for me to hike the Appalachian Trail. So I got on my pack and I started down the trail, and all of nature was around me, and I was just scared shitless. As you hike, you connect up with other folks who are going at about your pace, and you see over and over again. I ran into Tom literally the very first night I was on the trail. He was new at it also. He was in a lot better shape than I was. But we started hiking together. It was because of Tom that I got to the end points for the day that we had set. I knew he expected me to get there. So he pulled me along. We met others along the way, but that was a special bond. And the very first section, we finished it together.
So I was 15 years old at the time, and I joined up with Dad and Tom. And I was a little intimidated. I never really been on a real hiking trip like this before, and to start with the Appalachian Trail and to start with some guys that were way faster than me was something else. And so I remember struggling a lot. Robert Mallory, who was with us, he had to encourage me just to get up hills. I remember one spot in particular where it's a switchback, and to go up and up and up and up, and you think, well, surely I'm going to be at the top when you go around this bend, but turn right and there's more to go. By the end of the trip, Tom had taught me lessons about the zone, which is just a kind of a state of mind where you don't think about hiking or the pain or anything, you just kind of go on autopilot. We found that if we hiked for 3 or 4 days, we developed hiking legs, which makes hiking a lot easier. But since we would get off the trail because we were sectioning, we had to start over every time.
We came down into the Nantahala Outdoor Center at Wesser, and it's raining and just very uncomfortable. It's cold, but when we came out of the mountain, right across the street was the River's Edge restaurant. Went in there and got hot, juicy, fatty, cheesy cheeseburgers and pitchers of sweet tea. And I think we drank 3 pitchers of sweet tea and got cheeseburgers and french fries. That was delicious. Fontana Dam was the end of North Carolina. For me, it was the first state that I did. After 4 sections in 1 year, we had finished North Carolina. It was the first thing that we got to that signified, you had accomplished something. You broke your leg in 2002. Did you ever think you would keep hiking, much less finish the trail? No. We had spent the last year and a half completing 2 states. But in addition to Dad's leg, we were a long way away from the end. The night I broke my leg, a friend of mine, one of the doctors, came into my hospital room, and I never will forget him telling me, if you do everything we tell you to do, you might be able to walk again. That to me was the end of the Appalachian Trail. I went through therapy and got back to walking and then got back to hiking. And a year and a half later, we summited Clingman's Dome in the Smokies. And I sent a picture back to my surgeon saying, that MasterCard saying of, for everything else, there's Dr. Stark. But we did it and kept going.
In Tennessee, the weather really became a factor. At one point, Darth got walking pneumonia. We come out of the cabin, and it's a winter wonderland. We got to Carver's Gap, and everything was just completely encased in snow, and it was brutally cold. I didn't have a warm hat. I didn't even have like a warm jacket. I was just wearing my rain jacket. And thankfully, a family showed up, and they had a van, and so we hitched a ride with them off the mountain. That was kind of my personal breaking point at that point in time. After so many times being snowed in and cold, not being prepared, I just kind of decided to get off the trail.
So I kept going though, and it hit a beautiful section of the trail through the southern Virginia mountains. And I came to the Grand Sign at Damascus.
There's one spot on the Appalachian Trail that you see pictures shot that everybody uses. It is got symbolic of the whole trail, and that's McAfee Knob. It is a rock outcropping over a valley.
So, I got off the trail because of snowstorms, and I never thought Tennessee would win, but Dad kept going. He kept chugging along. He got to Damascus in Virginia. And, Virginia itself is the longest state on the trail, too. So, but he kept chugging along. And I think it was the fact that he did as much as he did that motivated me to say, well, he's doing this, so I need to be there and see this through.
While hiking at Radnor Lake, I ran into a orthopedic doctor who I had conversations with, and he retooled how I hiked. And he told me that the slower I went, the further I would go.
Since we started hiking our own pace, we would make sure not to get lost. The AT has painted white markers every 30 yards in both directions. In addition, Darth put together some detailed mileage spreadsheets. The mileage was broken up by shelters. Shelters are 3-sided structures with a raised floor and a roof. Nearby is a privy, and they are usually built near a water source. Which can be anywhere from 30 to 800 feet away. And in some cases, there's no water at all. Shelters are typically 8 to 15 miles apart. You can achieve 20 miles a day, depending on the terrain. But sometimes the mountains force you to stop short. If you don't want to be beholden to shelters, or if they're full, you carry a tent, which Darth carried. I carried the food bag, Darth the water filter, and I got the stove. While our gear improved over the years, including dropping 60 pounds between the two of us, the concept never changed. We would also hang the food bag from a branch, mostly because of mice. As for food, since we would be hiking on a 1,000 to 3,000 calorie deficit every single day, easy to make and high in calorie was the name of the game.
Harper's Ferry is symbolic. It's the symbolic halfway point. When I started the trail, I didn't ever want to say I'm trying to hike the whole trail. I didn't even want to try to say I was going to hike to Harper's Ferry, because they were just beyond my imagination for being able to do it. Getting to Harper's Ferry is like achieving something that is both look what you've done, but also look at what you have to do, which is the other half of the trail. But you can do it because you've done the first half, and that's what the confidence that it gave to me to keep going, and we could do this thing.
It's called Rocksylvania for a reason. Everything north of Harper's Ferry is all rocks. But the problem is, while the trail is rocks, the elevation is pretty flat. You go up to the top of a ridge and you stay on that ridge for a while. So you want to do as many miles as you did in the south. If you're impatient, you can do something really stupid. And so I stepped on some jagged rocks and twisted my left knee. And I had never hurt my knees before, and so this was a new experience, and I think I hurt my ACL. And it was so painful. And Dad was ahead of me, so I knew I had no choice but to just keep plugging along, so I hobbled to that next shelter, and the rest of the trip, I took a lot of ibuprofen, wore a knee brace, locked my knee, so I was basically hobbling. It would be a few years before my knee would feel 100%. But in the meantime, I knew I couldn't get off the trail after what happened at Roan Mountain. We walked out of the mountains for the first time, as the first mountain chain ended. For a while, civilization would be all around us, which gave us some texturing experiences at local hostels. Getting to the trail was also an adventure.
We took trains. and then we flew. We flew into New York City, we flew into Philadelphia, to Albany, and then would take trains and buses from those airports. And it's amazing. The most amazing one, though, is in Paulding, New York, where there is actually an Appalachian Trail train station with the North train coming out of Manhattan. Stops at the Appalachian Trail.
At the 501 shelter in Pennsylvania, a girl entrusted me to watch her dog for 3 hours while she went to town, earning my trail name, Dog Whisperer.
Once upon a time on a project site in Georgia that was way behind schedule, I borrowed a Darth Vader mask and I called all the construction crew together and I played like I was Darth Vader. And told them I was not amused by their progress.
I'm here to put you back on schedule.
I assure you, Lord Vader, my men are working as fast as they can.
And my project manager played like I was choking him, and he fell on the floor, and they started all calling me Darth Vader.
We escaped civilization and back into the woods of New England. After crossing into Massachusetts, I got sick on the trail for the first time. It was so bad I'm convinced it was norovirus. It would be the first time since Road Mountain that we were forced off the trail.
Dalton, Massachusetts, on the Appalachian Trail. Very rugged. All the women are coming out, giving him their underwear.
We are at the top of Mount Greylock. We're cold. So how do you feel?
Like a truck ran over me.
So we're sitting at a trailhead at a road, and this woman comes hiking by with a prosthetic leg. She was not just kind of slowly walking by, she was energetically going by. So I went over and introduced myself to her. She's doing a fundraiser. She went through a major accident and lost her leg. So she is backpacking the Appalachian Trail with a prosthetic leg. If she could do it, I can do it.
So everybody talks about the whites. Your frame of reference at this point, as far as mountains go, is all the way back in Tennessee. And those are all dirt trails, and I mean, they're tall. They're just as tall as these mountains. But it's all dirt trails, and so you've been through rocks in Pennsylvania, but those are small rocks. You're intimidated by the thought of harder trails, but you don't really know what to expect, and so we decide, the very first one, Moosilauke, we decide to slack pack that. You get above tree line, which is also different. In the south, you get up to the top of the mountain and you're still encased in trees. And so we do Moosilauke and we think, we've done the first one and it's hard, but we're good to go. And then we do Kinsman the next day.
It is straight up. And it just keeps going straight up.
That is no pure unmitigated hell.
Grabbing on the roots, pulling yourself up, and it just went on forever, and it was exhausting. That was our first taste of the whites.
This is our campsite for the night. How's it going, Dad?
Good. Creating a little wind wall. The wind's blowing that way. So hits the rock and goes over the tent.
A little redneck engineering.
Redneck engineering, especially when your fat, lazy, snoring body is in there holding the floor down.
Right.
As well as mine.
It's gonna be interesting. You can actually see Mount Washington way over there.
There it is. We're heading there.
Mount Washington is another one of those places that's mystic. It is the place where 8 different wind streams come together and make it into the worst place on the planet for weather. Stayed at the Lake of the Clouds hut, and next morning got up and climbed up to Mount Washington.
About 1,860 miles later.
And by the time we got to the top, it had gone from being sunny to totally cloudy. And then the rest of the day, we went across the presidentials and caught a sleet storm. So we started the day in the sun and ended the day in a sleet storm. That was the White Mountains in Mount Washington.
Windy.
Taking a break.
Taking a break. Hide behind a rock. Then after the Whites, you hit the Mahoosic Notch. What was that like?
So the Mahoosic Notch is this very narrow canyon that the trail passes through. And basically, on both walls, big, huge boulders, chunks of earth just fell down into this canyon. And so you go right through the bottom of it. And, I mean, these are boulders the size of houses. So you go around them, you go over them, you go under them. A lot of it is like caving. And you're taking your pack off and putting it through a hole, and then you're crawling afterwards.
Hello.
Southern Maine, you think, well, we're past the Whites, we're past the Notch, surely it should get easier, right? Straight up mountains, and in ways it was kind of even harder because in the Whites, sure you would do a mountain, but then you would hit a ridge maybe. And so in Southern Maine it was just mountain over and over and over, and so many mountains.
Did it.
And it was so many boulders and so many roots and so much mud. Heat and you had the bugs, and I mean, I'll be honest, we got kind of sick of it after a while.
So Adam, how cold is it?
It's actually not that cold.
George Washington has just forded the Delaware River.
But it isn't Christmas.
What?
And George Washington was freezing.
What did you think of Earth?
Our friend Earth. You run into all kinds of funny hikers on the trail. And as I think back over the 18 years, there have been some real characters. Well, Earth was definitely a real character.
How's it going, Earth?
Fine, very fine. And, well, this is a man's world.
Yeah. I really enjoy this lifestyle.
So after you cross the Kennebec River, right after is this itty-bitty little town called Caratunk, and in it is the Caratunk B&B Hostel. And we stayed there, and they're famous because of their barbecue sandwiches and milkshakes. It was the best barbecue sandwiches and best milkshakes I've ever had, and they give you a lot.
Southern Maine is, I think, the most enjoyable part of the whole Appalachian Trail. It has got some of the toughest landscape to climb, toughest mountains, all of the most technical kind of hiking you'd want to do. And then it turns into an area of lakes where you're hiking around lakes.
Lake.
And camping beside lakes and swimming in them and just gorgeous countryside. But all of it constantly with roots and rocks and mud. But that's what hiking is about.
We came down out of the mountains and onto a flat stretch right before Katahdin, commonly referred to as the red carpet. We got our first view of Katahdin.
So on our very last section, section 30, we went from the beginning of the 100-mile wilderness all the way to Mount Katahdin. It was so special to me that Carmen and Matt came to the northern end of the 100-mile wilderness and hiked south to meet us. And then Shayna flew in and she joined up with us and did Mount Katahdin. So all three of my kids I got to spend at the top of Mount Katahdin with. That was very special.
You know, you're looking forward to this mountain. And you've been looking forward to it for weeks, years. And, you know, you see it for the first time with your own eyes a few days prior. And, I mean, you're both filled with dread at the idea of finishing the trail. You're also simultaneously filled with joy at the prospect of finishing the trail. And so it's like these two emotions butting heads, and you don't really know what to think at the moment.
Thought I might see you up here.
You know, I'm just lollygagging around.
Lollygagging around.
And I figured I'd go for a hike this morning.
Yeah, you know, you go for a stroll up a mountain that's 5,000 feet.
First part of it was a nice mountain climb on a decent trail to get up to the Katahdin Stream Falls. And then from there, it turned into a boulder climb going straight up a rock face.
Have to get your flexibility on it.
And then get to the top, to the tablelands, and you can actually see the peak, and that was when it hit me, the realism of being here in this moment.
Yeah, I know, right? All along, for all these years, there's always been the next section to do, the next climb to get over. There was always something around the corner that was the next big challenge. And you had to save your mental energy for that. You had to save your doggedness to get it done for that. Well, we got up to the tablelands, and all that saving of energy just released for me.
Running out of steam.
Almost there.
I lost it. I just lost it. And I got to a couple of 100 feet from the sign, and I couldn't move. My body just stopped moving. It wouldn't go. It was like it's saying, no, I don't want to finish. And Adam came down, put his arm around me. I started bawling. I started crying like a baby. And we struggled up it, but we got up to the sign, and I couldn't believe it. There's the sign. And I reached down and kissed it, and then I just started bawling again. And I finally got that out of my system, and I was able to move away from the sign. Hiking the Appalachian Trail just is the most demanding, spiritually, emotionally, physically, mentally thing I've ever done. So would you do it again?
If I could do it again with my dad, I would. So yeah.
All right. Good job.